Now, as the hot weather looks set to increase, it's not just us humans that need cooling off. Donkeys at the Donkey Sanctuary in Sidmouth in Devon have also been enjoying specially made ice lollies, which provide a refreshing, healthy treat and the perfect way to cool down in the heat. The ice blocks are made from fruit and vegetables in water and not only provide a welcome treat during the sizzling temperatures, but they also provide a valuable form of enrichment, we're told. Donkeys love exploring, and this activity allows them to exhibit their natural foraging behaviours, a key factor in improving their welfare. Just a still picture of the donkeys. Some moving pictures would have been lovely, but we didn't seem to have those. Thanks for joining me today. Much more here on BBC News throughout the day on all the main stories.
This is BBC World News with me, Stephen Sackur. 4 months on from the Russian invasion, the EU is on the brink of offering Ukraine a major diplomatic prize, a pathway to membership of the EU club. After a visit to Kiev by European leaders, President Zelensky says membership of the EU has never been closer. An announcement as to whether Ukraine progresses straight to candidate status could come in the next few minutes, but there may still be roadblocks along the way.
And I'm Zainab Badawi in Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia, which is hoping to get its EU candidacy recommended by the European Commission. But there are signs that it will be told it must do better first.
Investigating the assault on the US Capitol, here's how rioters demanded that Vice President Mike Pence be dragged out of the building.
I'm telling you what, I'm hearing the Pence just caved.
No.
Is that true?
I didn't
I'm hearing reports the Pence caved.
And as the early summer heat builds across Europe, how much of that can we put down to climate change? Hello and a very warm welcome. Now it seems Ukraine's application to join the European Union is about to take a major step forward. In fact, in the last few seconds, the chief of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has taken to a podium in Brussels. She's going to be talking about whether Ukraine, Georgia and Moldova get a green light for EU membership. And we can join that news conference right now.
Criteria and the question whether and the political momentum. And we all know that Ukrainians are ready to die for the European perspective. We want them to live with us the European dream.
Now that was Ursula von der Leyen, chief of the European Commission, giving some very significant news for 3 countries. I think it's fair to say the top headline there is that Ukraine, after more than 100 days of war with Russia, Ukraine is being given the green light for EU membership candidate status, as it's called, by the EU Commission. Now, that does not mean that Ukraine now formally gets candidate status, because that has to be signed off by the leaders of all the European nations. They are meeting in an EU Council summit next week, and no doubt that will be top of their agenda. This isn't, though, just about Ukraine. We also heard that Moldova is to be granted candidate status as well. But the third country on the list, Georgia, also very keen to get that pathway to EU membership. Well, it's not quite as straightforward for Georgia. In the words of Ms. van der Leyen, they recognise Georgia's aspiration to EU membership, but they are recommending that more be done by the Georgian government to meet certain threshold standards, and the Commission will review and assess the situation in future months. So Ukraine and Moldova are given the candidate status by the Commission, Moldova not yet. And all of this then, of course, goes to the EU leaders at that EU Council summit. More on this, of course, in the coming minutes and hours here on BBC World News. Now, parts of Europe are on heatwave alert this weekend, with temperatures soaring and concerns growing about the changing summer climate. Spain, which has already seen its hottest May since the beginning of the century, is sweltering under temperatures forecast to get as high as 43 degrees Celsius. France is seeing its earliest ever hot spell, according to forecasters, and that's worsening a drought and raising the risk of wildfires. And here in the UK, level 3 heat warnings have been issued for parts of southern England on what looks like it's going to be the hottest day of the year. Now, this phenomenon isn't just Europe's. In the United States, around 120 million people are under some sort of advisory as heat waves scorch the upper Midwest and the southeast of the US, while India and Pakistan are only just recovering from what has been a crippling period of record-breaking temperatures. Well, I'm joined now by Chloe Brimicombe, who is an environmental climate science PhD researcher at the University of Reading. And Chloe, you obviously take a great interest in what is happening right around the world. How worried, how alarmed are you by what appears to be more extreme heat coming earlier than ever? All right. Well, Chloe Brimicombe, thank you very much for giving us your analysis on what is going on with our weather, with our climate. Now let's get some of the day's other news. The British Home Secretary has signed an order to extradite the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to the United States. The Australian's being held in a London prison and the US wants him on espionage charges. WikiLeaks called it a, quote, dark day for press freedom and British democracy. China's Navy has launched its third aircraft carrier and the first entirely designed and built in China. The 80,000-ton Fujian is almost as big as the largest US aircraft carrier. Electromagnetic catapult technology will help it to quickly launch planes from on deck. Although it's likely to be some years before the vessel enters service, the launch is symbolic of China's rapid military advance. And Nepal is preparing to move its Everest base camp because global warming and human activity are making the current one unsafe. The camp, used by up to 1,500 people in the spring climbing season, is situated on the rapidly thinning Khumbu Glacier. Researchers say meltwater destabilizes the glacier, and climbers say crevasses are increasingly appearing at base camp while they sleep in their tents. Do stay with us here on BBC World News, because still to come, Russia's foreign minister tells the BBC there is no war in Ukraine and Moscow did not invade the country. You're watching BBC World News with me, Stephen Sackur. These are the latest headlines. Within the last few minutes, the EU Commission says it is recommending advancing Ukraine's application to join the bloc. It will become candidate status. A US congressional committee has heard more damning evidence about Donald Trump's apparent attempts to overturn the result of the 2020 presidential election. Witnesses have described how Mr. Trump and his aides put pressure on the former Vice President Mike Pence not to validate Joe Biden's victory. North America correspondent Peter Bowes has this report. Well, Deborah, we thank you for following it for us. Obviously, lots more to come from the US capital. That's it pretty much for this half hour. I'll be back very soon with more from BBC World News, so please do not go away. Bye for now. This is BBC World News. I'm Stephen Sackur. These are the headlines. Ukraine moves a significant step closer to joining the EU.
The Commission recommends to the Council, first, that Ukraine is given European perspective, and second, that Ukraine is given candidate status.
But the European Commission says Ukraine must push through reforms on the rule of law, human rights, and tackling corruption. We're going to be live in Ukraine and in Brussels for all of the latest. Also on the programme, Russia's foreign minister tells the BBC there is no war in Ukraine and Moscow didn't invade the country. The committee investigating the assault on the US Capitol hears how rioters demanded Vice President Mike Pence be dragged out of the building. And as the early summer heat builds across Europe, how much can we put that down to climate change? Hello and a very warm welcome. Ukraine's application to join the European Union has taken a major step forward. The EU Commission has recommended that the country be given official candidate status. Now, that follows months of lobbying by the government of President Zelensky, who intensified his appeal to Brussels following Russia's military invasion. But the process of becoming a full-fledged EU member is a long and complicated one. Here's the Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen. Forceful words there from Sergei Lavrov, that interview with our Russia editor Steve Rosenberg. Now, parts of Europe are on heat wave alert this weekend with temperatures on the rise and concerns growing about the changing summer climate. Spain, which has already seen its hottest May since the beginning of this century, is sweltering under temperatures forecast to reach as high as 43 degrees Celsius. France is seeing its earliest ever hot spell, according to forecasters, worsening a drought and raising the risk of wildfires. And here in the UK, level 3 heat warnings have been issued for parts of southern England on what looks likely to be the hottest day of the year. And this isn't just about Europe. In the US, around 120 million people are under some sort of advisory as a heat wave scorches the upper Midwest and the southeast. While in India and Pakistan, they are only just recovering from what has been a crippling period of record-breaking temperatures. Now, just a short while ago, I spoke to Chloe Brimickham, who is an environmental climate science researcher at the University of Reading, and she explained why temperatures are so high at the moment. Do stay with us here on BBC World News, because still to come, the committee investigating the assault on the US Capitol hears how rioters demanded that Vice President Mike Pence be dragged out of the building. You're watching BBC World News with me, Stephen Sackur. The latest headline, the EU Commission says it is recommending advancing Ukraine's application to join the bloc to candidate status. A US congressional committee has heard more damning evidence about Donald Trump's apparent attempts to overturn the result of the 2020 presidential election. Witnesses described how Mr. Trump and his aides put pressure on the former Vice President Mike Pence not to validate Joe Biden's victory. Our North America correspondent Peter Bowes has this report. Now, it's said that the global perfume business is worth around $50 billion a year, and it is a high-stakes business trying to make sure that customers pick the right product. Now, a famous French brand is using cutting-edge technology to give it a helping hand. The BBC's Tim Ullman has this explanation. And that's it for this half hour of the programme, but do stay with us. There's loads more to come. I'll see you soon. You're watching BBC World News with me, Stephen Sackur. The headlines: Ukraine moves a significant step closer to joining the EU.
The Commission recommends to the Council, first, that Ukraine is given European perspective, and second, that Ukraine is given candidate status.
But the European Commission says Ukraine must push through reforms on the rule of law, human rights, and tackling corruption. We're going to speak to the mayor of Mariupol, also on this programme. 50 years since one of the biggest scandals in US political history. We'll talk to one of the investigators in the so-called Watergate scandal. Using virtual reality to help preserve endangered languages. Can technology help us to save cultures? Hello and a very warm welcome to BBC World News. Now, the UN Human Rights Commissioner says the extent of death and destruction caused by Russia's attack on the Ukrainian city of Mariupol suggests that serious violations of international law did take place. Around 90,000 Ukrainians remain in the city of Mariupol with little access to electricity, phone line, internet, water or healthcare. Now, I am joined live by the mayor of Mariupol, Vadim Boychenko, who is now in Zaporizhia. Mr. Boychenko's words are going to be translated by an interpreter. Mr. Mayor, welcome to BBC News. We need, if you would, we need you to paint us a picture from your contacts, your information of what life is like for the thousands of civilians who remain in Mariupol today. Mayor Boychenko, we thank you very much for joining us from your current location in Zaporizhia. It's not the easiest thing to conduct an interview like that in translation, but we do thank you very much indeed for joining us on BBC World News. Well, let's go to the US now, where it is 50 years to the day since that break-in at the Watergate complex in Washington, D.C. that kicked off one of the biggest political scandals in US history. The plot was ultimately linked directly to President Richard Nixon's White House, and it exposed a broader culture of corruption, abuse of power, and dirty tricks that ultimately brought Nixon down. Jill Wine-Banks was on the special prosecutor's team investigating the cover-up that followed the break-in. And to mark the anniversary, she's been speaking to the BBC about the Watergate scandal and how it relates to the current January the 6th assault on the Capitol hearings in Washington, D.C. today. The fascinating recollections there of Jill Wine-Banks. Now, the British Home Secretary has signed an order to extradite the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to the United States. The Australian is being held in a London prison on espionage charges. WikiLeaks called it a dark day for press freedom and for British democracy. Do stay with us here on BBC World News, because still to come, we're going to ask, can researchers preserve endangered languages by using virtual reality technology? You're watching BBC World News with me, Stephen Sackur. There are more than 7,000 languages spoken across the world, but almost half of them are at risk of dying out. In fact, the United Nations estimates that every 2 weeks, a new language becomes extinct. Now, researchers are using virtual reality technology to help preserve them. They've created an interactive film allowing viewers to experience the life of the nomadic Kusanda people in Nepal. Now, it's hoped the project will expand to feature other endangered languages and cultures as well. Well, to discuss it, I'm joined by Fabrizio Galeazzi, Deputy Director of the Story Lab Research Institute at the Anglia Ruskin University, who worked on this technology. Fabrizio, you're going to have to explain it to me. How does this VR technology work in terms of helping people learn these endangered languages? Not only can you say it, you just did say it. So
okay, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. All right, well, while artificial intelligence and robotics may be considered the future of medicine for a few South African hospitals, that future is already here. Cape Town's Tygerberg Hospital is proving to be a hotbed of tech innovation. Robots are already being used in surgery, as well as helping patients connect with their loved ones. The BBC's Vumani Mkizi has more. Well, that's pretty much it for this edition of the programme. I'll be back with you next week. Do stay here on BBC World News, because there's lots more to come, particularly on the decision to give Ukraine candidate status for EU membership. That's it from me for now. Bye.
Hello there. Thank you for joining us on this extended look at world weather. We're going to start off in North America.